afraid. And I have recordings. I have my phone just in case if something like this ever happened. So it's hard to be black in America. It's hard to be black in Flint.
You have the guns. You're supposed to be our protector, but yet you're not.
Who put out that poster? Who organized for that date for people to meet on Miller Road?
What was that, May 26th, there was a post on Facebook. Oh, May 30th, Target parking lot, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, we'll see. Bring masks and this, that, and the third. I said, okay, we'll see. Events leading up to the day, I'm on Snapchat like, yo, if we're gonna really do this, we gotta do this the right way. Kind of like organizing the troops a little bit. Like, I don't know who that person was. They didn't even show up, come to find out later on. But pull up May 30th, it's like, I put it on my Facebook, same thing. Hey, we really here on May 30th. Like, if we're gonna do it, let's come do it. And people just kept coming, kept coming, kept coming. But the events leading up to it was just like all social media at that point. It's just, are we really gonna do it or not? And of course you see everything that's going across the country too. That's another thing. So more so inspiration of just the wrongful death. And then on top of that, what to do in like, not in retaliation, but more so just a rebellion. That's what's happening at the time.
Very quickly, you took a position that appeared to be of a position of leadership as far as guiding people and being more vocal than others.
Right.
What led you to that point?
It's a really good question. You know, you get that feeling on the inside to be like, everybody kind of being just stagnant. Somebody had to step up at that point. So I took it upon myself to just be like, you know what, let's move to the street then. Talking to other people that were kind of had the same idea. There were like other people that were black and white that were like, hey, you wanna go to the street? Yeah, let's go to the street, let's do it. And that's what we did. I think at that point, that's when it kind of got, at that time in that moment, it got real for a lot of us. And it was like, you know what, let's go ahead and do it. It was amazing, actually, to be honest.
Sheriff, to whatever degree you can share about it, the intelligence, people were keeping track, of course, in advance about things that were happening and chatter in the community. When did you get wind of it? When did you know that it was going to be as sizable as it became?
Same date that Johnny spoke of, and we had not even met before that day. Come to find out later, I have worked with his father, who was in law enforcement, and we had a common connection that I found out that day that proved to be very important in us building a relationship. But we had anticipated the protest, we planned for it, but that was before Friday hit. When Friday hit and big cities across the country were lit on fire, it changed our response and what we were doing for the May 30th event. It changed Flint Township's response, our response, MSP. The whole movement became more of, it's now going to be an us and them, and we were planning to be another statistic. And I'm told people that in hindsight, had that moment not happened, then we wouldn't have what this community has around the world. And that's how I started prepping for that day.
There were trucks blocking some of those residential streets on that day.
So we use our investigative tools to track the chatter. Like Johnny said, there's a lot of people talking but didn't even show up. There's a lot of people that showed up that weren't even from our community. They weren't even from the city, and they came with maybe intentions that were not what other people wanted, and that is to hear a voice. So we prepped like everybody else, and what really caught my attention is on Friday, they burned a sheriff's office in Oregon. And my office is just a mile and a half down the road. My parents live a quarter mile from where Target is. So I had a vested interest to be a part of it, to make sure that I've done my part to protect the inmates, the staff, and the business owners. We saw them, they were boarding up from the inside. We knew there was business owners that were armed on the inside of the businesses. There were owners that had sheets of plywood. Everybody was bracing. I think there was this undertone of, what are we going to walk into on both sides? And then when the first car showed up at 5 o'clock, it was game time.
But why did law enforcement allow the protests to spill over into the streets?
Well, I think law enforcement actually does have to allow for protests to be heard. We have to balance that business and commerce still are able to function, so you can't shut down a main thoroughfare, because now you're creating another problem by trying to solve one. But I think law enforcement has to provide not only a safe place for people to protest, no matter if it's for race relations or some other issue. That is our job, to protect, serve. I mean, this country was based on protest, so it wasn't about should we allow, should we not. We have a constitutional right to protest. It's law enforcement's job to protect, to keep it safe. But then when people spill over and go from protest to violence, that's when law enforcement draws the line, and it needs to not only protect businesses and residents, but also protesters who want to be heard but not hurt. And so I think the cooperation that we had that day between all the agencies, we wanted to give space, but yet we were bracing for the opportunity if violence was an option.
What message were you trying to get across? Was it a mix of just trying to raise awareness? Was it also a combination of anger at witnessing what you had seen and your experience as a black man in America?
I think it's everything you just said, actually. We still, to this day, have a systemic issue. It's just not, it hasn't changed. As much progress that we make on a local level, I think just like with relationships and having conversation, we still have a systemical issue. So the first thing I thought of at that time was what Sheriff talked about, like, if this does spill over, like, are you ready just in case it does? That's the things that protesters have to think about. That's the things that activists have to think about, because this is, the line of work that we do is not necessarily the safest work, because you have people that can come in from outside sources or people that are not from the community, like he said, where they can incite violence, right? That wasn't necessarily the case here, because the whole point that I've said plenty of times on plenty of interviews, like, we did not want to actually try to destroy things. That wasn't the course of action. That wasn't what we wanted to do. If it went that way, then personally, like, I was ready to just take whatever came with that and, you know, let it lay on my responsibility. But at the same time, that wasn't the aim or the goal. The goal really was to get the awareness out. The world needs to realize that, like, black people have been having this issue for 400 plus years, and it has not stopped since. But we're going to continue to keep on sweeping stuff under the rug, or we're going to start holding people accountable for their positions and also their jobs. Take accountability for that, and whatever that looks like, but also at the same time pushing as much as possible just the message in general. You
mentioned that the goal was not violence and destruction. Were you concerned that people could be injured, though? There's already some of the people in the crowd already have a lack of trust for law enforcement. I saw vehicles plowing through frustrated with, you know, people in the street, a variety. So either concerns for safety from other people in the public or from law enforcement. Well,
I mean, it's not like an elephant in the room or not. We deal with a different rhetoric, you know, a year ago. Who was president a year ago? Who was pushing these type of ideals and mantras a year ago? I think at that point, and this is not for black people, because black people understood what's going on, but I think from the white point of view, you have two sides. You got some white liberals, you got some white conservatives. Some people that are conservatives are more so like, get the hell out the street, per se. I can say other words explicitly, but I won't. But it's like, what are you doing? Go get a job, or you should be at work. Like, no, we do work. That's part of the issue, though. Like, you think because we work, we don't supposed to be outside, like, protesting a problem? Like, that's crazy. To have that dynamic going on at the time I wasn't really afraid at the time, honestly. Still not to this day. But mainly just because if somebody would have got hurt, it would have went ugly, I'll be honest. It would have went very, very ugly. But also as well, like, it is appreciative from Flint Township where they, you know, made some borders of some sort to make sure that wouldn't happen, you know. And I definitely thank them for that, at least, for sure.
Sheriff, I know that Flint Township was here, of course, outside near the property, lined up, and throughout the community, the Sheriff's Department was represented. Were there other agencies that are out here as well assisting?
Especially when the crowd turned towards the police department, because there was this slow dance going. Even people in the crowd didn't know where it was going to go. Law enforcement, when they turned towards the police department in Fleckenstein, northbound, dead ends into the police department. And at that point, they put out all available vehicles, all available officers, all available police departments respond to Flint Township. So you heard sirens just pop off everywhere. So every agency that was available was here. We had, just think, we had Davison Township here, we had Mount Morris Township, we had everybody, because nobody knew what was happening. I said it was the epitome of this clash that was about to spill over one way or another. So a lot of agencies involved. This just happened to be Flint Township, They were the incident command for the operation, and that's why it was here.
I remember that decision too. I remember I made that decision, like yesterday. That's crazy you said that. Okay.
And Sheriff, you tell us what went into that moment. You all have been preparing already. The agencies have been collaborating. What went into that moment of lining up?
As we saw the crowd go past Linden Road, there was a big fire truck there. They went past the fire truck. When they turned northbound, that's when the whole temperature changed.
So the police that were lined up behind the vehicles are now racing ahead of the demonstrators. They're cutting through the Genesee Valley parking lot. Not sure exactly why.
Again, not knowing the intentions of the crowd, which by this point was in the hundreds. You were in the thick of it. You saw that it grew exponentially from 5 o'clock on. We are built in to train for any situation. And when we saw the crowd coming to the police department, orders are given from the command center, of which I was not in. I was out on the street, to fortify the line. They cannot breach the line. They cannot get to the police department.
We have come to a stop right now. We're at the police station, and police are right now geared up in riot gear right now.
It was law enforcement's belief that they were going to try to get into the police department, burn it, smash the glass, infiltrate, and there was a line drawn with riot gear, helmets, batons, OC spray, rubber pellets, less than lethal forces, multiple police agencies, not to let that happen.
Was there any concern of trying to balance protection of property and people with also not making the scene appear maybe more adversarial?
No. I've been on the job. I'm just completing my 28th year. I have never seen the level of anxiety between two crowds like I did that day. So everything was, I call it a sympathetic response, that fight or flight. You're not planning. There was no, okay, so this is what they're doing. What do we do now? Everything was just responsive. And when you felt the tension, there's no chance to determine what is the best way, what do we think the long-term goals. You don't have that ability. It goes from leadership to management. And we were managing the scene, when I say we, law enforcement, and the protesters were managing their scene, and it was this clash of titans that came and were literally centimeters from each other, face to face.
George Floyd! George Floyd!
You want the best outcome, but you could feel the tension. What were you feeling in that moment, if you could describe that tension?
I remember putting on my helmet. I had my vest on. I had my mask that I already actually fit tested at a doctor's office off of Linden Road. Of course, I have my pistol. I'm coming from the back of the police department, and I'm seeing officers and command staff from different agencies put on their helmets. There was just a sense of tension that was unbelievable. I come up over the back of the grass of the police department looking southbound, and I saw the crowd coming. And I literally said to myself, I cannot believe this is happening. I cannot believe this is happening. Of all the things that we've done through COVID and feeding people, and my heart, like, this guy in Minneapolis caused this in Flint Township, in Genesee County. And when I saw the crowd, I mean, my dad was in the 67 riots as a Detroit police officer. My grandfather was in the 45 riots as a Detroit police officer, and I'm living it now. There was a sense of disbelief, and I'm going to tell you, as I got closer to the line, the first thing I did is I saw one of my sergeants there. He had a less than lethal shotgun. It's got an orange stock and an orange rail, and I had rubber pellets in it. And I said, Rudy, I said, move behind the police department, or police car. I said, it sends a bad message. I go over to tell another guy, one of my other sergeants, do the same thing. He's like, Sheriff, that guy's got a pistol. So I look in there, I'm like, you got open carry in there. We already had intel that they were setting up Molotov cocktails. Not Johnny. I learned who Johnny was in about 6 minutes from here. But other people were bringing in weapons and bricks and rocks and telling crowds where to go, burn this down, burn. So we didn't know where they're going. We didn't know if there was a crowd that was going to spin off, go down this road. We had residents that were fleeing their houses because they didn't know what was happening. And I wish I could tell you that everything was systematized. It wasn't. It was organized chaos on both ends.
What's going through your mind?
I was trying to hold a lot because it's still an emotional thing for me to even talk about it. But take it to the police station. We want some answers of some sort. that was the ideal, the goal, the communicative aspect, right? We didn't really want to come up here and, you know, have that type of like thought or idea to come destroy something. I don't think that was the goal for the leaders of the situation. I don't think that was the goal. But coming down this road, it's a lot. Because as a black person, systemically, you see the issues from every aspect, but then you see that same thing that you've seen on TV, you know, CNN, on Fox, on anywhere. It's the same response, which triggers the first emotion of, here we go again with the same BS. That's not, like, why don't nobody don't want to talk about nothing? Our response is, all right, what you gonna do? Because as a black person, you see shields and riot gear. You think, a lot of people think about historically, 60s, 70s, civil rights movement, MLK, Malcolm X, Angela Davis. You think about Bobby Seale, you think about Fred Hampton, you think about all of that at one time. That's all, everything's going through my head at that time. So to have the decision to kind of just let happen what happened in that sense, but people also having the resolve from either side was a testament to, well, we didn't want to become another statistic. You know, in Flint, we already do too much violence as it is, so why would you put this on a grander scale, kind of? We was willing to let it happen if it did go, and that's something I've never spoke to him about. But at the same time, as he said, like when that clash happened, and our first response was to like kneel to let them understand. You see a lot of tears, you see a lot of people just, black folks frustrated at the end of the day, very frustrated. And it was a very, very hard moment to deal with all of that at once. Nervousness, anxiety, all my depression I had from just seeing what happened to George, right? Everything from my own personal family, seeing what happened with my uncle, see what happened with myself. You know, I've dealt with MSP in ways that some people wouldn't even believe. Like, it just, it's all of that at one time. But to have that response to where, like, we didn't want to bum rush, but more so let them hear the pain and the anxiety. Because a lot of, everybody knows that's a brotherhood over there. That's a whole fraternity over there on that side of the fence. We know that something's happening across the country that's still being broadcasted across everywhere else. So yeah, like, of course that what happened with George, it didn't happen here, but it's still in communication of everything else is like it's just, it's almost like a very, very weird thing. I wouldn't say guilty of association, but it's all with association. So it's like, because that happened to George with association with black people, we gonna respond that way. Because that's what happened with that officer, and now you're seeing the response of what's happening in the country, of course law enforcement gonna respond that way. That's naturally what they're supposed to do. So it's like, when that happened, it was just a lot at once, and it's hard to articulate a lot of that emotion without like going into a deep darker sometimes. But I'm glad that it didn't turn out the way that a lot of places, you know, could have been. And I'm glad as well that nobody just shot a random bullet. You know what I mean? Like that could have happened too. I was ready for that too. It could have went ugly. It could have went like, I'm hearing stuff I never heard before. Like, we never really had extensive conversation about like what happened besides of the after effects. But hearing that, it's like, they could have just fired one and it would have been a whole different outcome. You know what I mean? Like that would have just been totally different. And I'm hearing it now, and that response, that would have, oh man, I don't even know.
Your motives were to communicate. Did you know that there were other people that had infiltrated the crowd with ulterior motives and with weapons?
Oh yeah, I definitely knew. I knew we had people that was carrying, including myself. I knew that though, right? But it was just more so of protecting myself and also people. Because if stuff do go left, regardless if it's coming from them or if it's coming from somebody else who's trying to be anti what we're doing, you have to, protection of the people comes first.
Obviously, George Floyd was the spark of it, but you mentioned a lot of frustration in general. So this was sort of venting a lot of the trauma this segment of the population feels that they experience in general, wanting to be heard. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is 400 plus years of oppression. When you really think about it, like after the Emancipation Proclamation, this is no offense to the sheriff's department here, but sheriffs were like historically went to the north to grab slaves, bring them back to the south, to restore the south, right? So that's a historical fact. So it's all of that happening. Plus, if you're a black man or black woman, you catch yourself looking at a white woman, you got put in jail, right? Because that's where the prison industrial complex comes in, the PIC. So it's all of that in combination with civil rights movement, with the historical things you see in movies, media, television, with the historical things of the fact of what happened with MLK, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. You see all of that. You see leaders that continuously keep on getting put out of the country, aka Assata Shakur, or even people that just try to get silence in that case, Fred Hampton, right? So you see all these things happen. So when you fast forward to 2020 and you see what happened with George, I think it just spilled over. That was just, I hate to say it, but it honestly was a catalyst, but it spilled over extremely.
Sure, I want to get to the union that happened, but I also want to ask you though, when you mentioned about the Molotov cocktails and the bricks, were any of these items actually recovered?
So not at that day, but we had over 40 protests from that day forward. And downtown, we had places where bricks and rocks were stored behind bushes. So yes, that was there, but the people who posted that would always say it in a way that, hey, I think they're here. So to track those down as to who actually put them there, we were going at such a high rate of speed, we weren't able to just do a full network investigation of who actually was behind it. We did have, and I won't go into great detail, other outside groups that we knew were coming in to infiltrate a righteous anger. They were not from our area. They came into places like 23 and Hill Road, Center and Lippincott. They would take their license plates off, and they didn't want to be identified. Well, we had already had the intel of where they would be, so we made them known that they were not going to infiltrate and cause harm, and they didn't. So there was a lot of circles later on the protest that we created to keep it as safe as we can. And I might add, of those 40, we didn't have a shot fired. We never arrested anybody. There was nobody that attacked a police officer.
Nope.
There's nobody attacked a black person.
Nope.
We heard the voices. Now, were there some exchanges from people? Absolutely. I mean, I took heat because people who didn't like the stand that I took, trying to bring unity, that's fine. It's not a popularity contest to bring unity. But one thing Jonnie said that is important to note is they were feeling that anxiety on their end. It's only going to take a shot. What if they shot in? What if they did that? We were feeling that exact same anxiety on our end. What if somebody were to just pull out and rip around or attack an officer? It was literally one trigger away on either side, and then both sides are committed. There's no do-overs. And that's the anxiety that was there.
Also, I would add, like, even, them hearing about the incel and the Antifa situations, we heard the same thing. People wanted to come attack us because of what we were standing for. It's people from the far right side. You got people from the far left that want to put bricks down to kind of like help the fact, just in case we want to throw something at them. So it's like it was a weird 40+ protest. It was very weird. It was a very weird time, but staying steadfast and trying to make sure that, like you said, like pushing I would say unity, but also as well like changing the message thereof. I think it changed a lot of what could have happened to what's actually happening.
Sheriff intel regarding the bricks and everything, was that as of even May 30th for this particular march or the subsequent ones?
That and beyond. We had intel saying crossover 75, go into the Miller Road mansions, raid the houses, don't stop there. These are, we call them keyboard warriors. They sit back and they want to see other people facilitate their violence. But that's a big difference, and what that does is that incites people, and it literally takes away the purpose of a protest. Protests and riots, two different things, and we wanted to make sure we heard, and I know you're going to get into this, the voice of the protesters.
And speaking of that moment, I saw a few individuals walking, getting closer, approaching the officers in the line. Eventually, at some point, I started seeing fist bumps. I'm not sure who was first to do it. I know at some point I saw you, Jonnie, fist bumping. At one point, there was a need, it appeared, for distance, but then that line got a little bit closer.
I'll give credit to one person. This is before he spoke. He said, I'd rather be on the other side right now. That's what he said. And he was like, I get it. He said, I get what you're doing it for. He said, we ain't really trying to have no issue from here. He's like, we don't feel that way. And that's people on the line saying that. Now, there's other officers that got a little bit more vindictive face on their face, and I won't name them. I know who they are. But they had a little bit of a different intention, I can tell. They were just waiting. It's almost like a bloodthirsty dog, like waiting for you to just jump stupid in that case.
Come and join us to be a force with us. Show us that you understand how we really feel. If all lives matter, you should be on this side with us.
I think you got like two different leaders in different places, right? So you kind of like don't want the violence to happen at all. I couldn't believe this was happening in Genesee County. I couldn't believe it. I said, oh, we got this many people come out here that care for it? Oh, great, this is awesome, right? Okay, good, we get it. Like, now let's do something about it, right? But then at the same time for him, it's like, I can't believe this is happening, but who's gonna step up in those moments, in the tension moments? Like, who gonna actually step up? That takes a lot of charisma, a lot of machismo, a lot of leadership skill, right? To come in that moment to just do what he did. I don't think no other chief across the county could have did what he did, because I didn't see no other chief out there. I seen him. You know what I mean? Like that's a testament to his values beyond what his occupation is, right? That speaks to him from a character standpoint, because when that stuff comes off, he's still a human, right? So that's all of us may not agree with the occupation, but when it comes down to having character, that's different. And that's something I give him credit for sure, because to have somebody tell somebody with a whole entire rubber bullet shotgun and stay behind the car because how it can incite, because the visual, right, the assumption. It's a lot of assumption, a lot of all these other different things, but to have that, to be like, nah, like, we not doing it. Put your stuff down, we not doing it. Because at some point there was a part where people were just like, nah, like, we want to talk. You seen a lot of tears and stuff like that, but people just want to talk. Like, is what happened in Minneapolis going to happen in Flint? Because we see harassment, systemic racism. We see racism from other counties, right? Other police departments across the entire county. We see it all the time. So if all y'all here now, which is the perfect time to be here, then okay, can we talk about that stuff? Can we get a resolution somehow? Because we don't want that to happen to one of us.
Sheriff, in that moment, there's a shift in the mood and the environment and the atmosphere. It's a little bit risky though, because there still might be people that are not on board with this shift that's happening. How do you all decide that maybe we can put down the batons?
Well, I think it's important to remember there's multiple agencies that were there, and there's multiple police leaders and different command structures that were there. And we did not communicate. That was happening so fast that the decision to do what I did was an individual decision. It wasn't a planned decision. But like Jonnie said, you see what people are made of in chaos. And not to be egocentric or macho, it was simply that I am going to send a different psychological message by taking my helmet off and walking into the crowd. I have a sheriff shirt. They know I'm a white dude. Many people know that I'm the sheriff. There was one guy in the crowd that I knew was Jeff Hawkins, about 15 yards in there. And I had just talked to him a half hour before. And I'd call him and I said, where are you guys? I'm in the crowd. And I laid eyes on him. And I had seen the same fist bumps. And as many people were fist bumping, there was a lot of folks that didn't want it. They were ready for the fight because they didn't know where it was coming from. And there's just a lot of emotion. And it's hard to put into words. You were there. Everything was so volatile. But when I saw the fist bump, I knew deep in my heart that, all right, there's a break in action over there.
No! You stop
I still had not met him. I just knew based on his dreads, which it's kind of like his look. He had a Michigan State Spartans bandana on, and I just saw his eyes. He's got big, beautiful, bright eyes, and I saw him on there, and then the dreads, and I just connected with him, and I said, that's it. And as soon as that happened, I walked in. It just so happened that Chad Miller had already started fist pumping people here. I didn't know anything about Sean Poole. I had already actually talked to Sean Poole like an hour before at a church parking lot before this all happening, and we were just kind of chill. But I saw the fist pump, and then one of our captains, Cronkite, come over, and he had another organizer who I don't know who it was, and I still don't know his name. He goes, Sheriff, this guy wants to talk to you. And it was just a natural response when I turned him and I said, bro, that guy is not who we are, meaning Chauvin. I didn't even know his name. He's not who we are. These cops here, we're here to protect you. Like, we're not the enemy. We're not I didn't say this, but we're not a perfect profession. I know that, but we're not your enemy. Like, they're laying down their weapons. What do you need us to do? And that's what he says, tell the people what you told me. And I said, get their attention. I still had not been introduced to Johnny, but he's standing right there. If you watch the video, you'll see Jonnie Franklin III standing right there. And I said, get their attention, and he yelled out, hey, everybody, the sheriff wants to say something. And
we want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. Yeah. I want to make this a parade, not a protest. Come on. That's it. You got little ones here, you got dogs, so what's up? So listen, I'm just telling you, these cops love you. That cop over there hugs people, so you tell us what you need to do.
Walk with us! 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 Walk with us!
Let's walk with us! Let's walk!
And I made the statement and the decision that was the best decision I ever made in my police career. And I wish I could say in hindsight that, oh yeah, I knew exactly what the motive was. I knew exactly what the outcome would be. And no, it came right from here. I can't describe where I would have conjured up other than the world got to see what I've been my whole life. And if you don't have a good character, if you don't have a good heart, then when you're put to the test, people will see it. If you have a good character and a good heart put to the test, they will see that too. And when I told the people, and you were there, Ron, you did such an incredible job, worthy of the Emmy, and you narrated what happened. You saw history being made. And then I said, what do you need us, not me, what do you need us to do? And within a second, people that Johnny didn't even know, Quan Adams, who I'd never met before, who I talked to all the time, you heard him say, walk with us. Like, they didn't meet beforehand and say, okay, now if we're ever asked what we need, we're going to say, walk with us. None of that. It just went, you tell us what we need to do, walk with us. And then they kept chanting it. And I took a step back. I take a couple breaths. I actually high five. And then I'm making this decision. I see in my mind, when I watch the video myself, I see all these things that are happening in my head. You know, is this good? Is this bad? What's the thing? And that's it. And then I said, let's walk. And then I said it again, and then I started screaming it. And as soon as that happened, that's when I first met Jonnie Franklin III. And I met Quan Adams and Jeff Hawkins, and the four of us walked back. And the crowds on Miller Road grew exponentially. Unbeknownst to us, it's being fed around the world. People expected Flint to burn. They expected black folks to clash with white cops. They expect cops to clash with the protesters. They expected that. But there was a different response on both ends. I couldn't have done what I did unless somebody listened to what I said. I couldn't have seen what I saw unless I listened to what the protesters said. When I put out what you need us to do and they responded, there was this give and take back and forth. And then when both parties agreed, I know there wasn't a bunch of cops there that I consulted with, and probably a lot of them said, what are you doing? Same thing when they said, walk with us. They're like, what are you doing? But what happened was the heart of the people on both sides, that was the loudest voice. And when we said walk and the crowd turned to walk, that's when I said, man, it's great to meet you. I said, we made history today. What's your name? He goes, Jonnie Franklin. He goes, you know my stepdad. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And Jeff Hawkins and Quan Adams. If you know Quan, he's a big, tall, dark black dude. He's got a black hoodie with a black bandana. He's got a really deep voice. And as we were walking back, the crowds kept going. And we had more people on Miller Road going back than we did coming there, because I didn't see people were dropping dishes in their sinks and getting to where it was. They wanted to be a part of this. Ron, you saw it, man. And we saw people's hate turn into hope. We have a political official who is very dear to me. I've known her for a long time, and she told me later on she was with you all in the crowd. She's a white lady, and she just wanted to be a part of it. And what she felt before to what happened after, she goes, it was a total switch in temperature, a total switch in, and now somebody listened. And that's all it took. It's like, I can't pay the price for something that happened 400 years ago. I can't pay the price for what somebody does in Minneapolis, or I can't do it. But what I can do is what Chris can do. And I needed to listen.
How do we talk? And all people want to do is be heard. Am I right? That's right. So we're hearing them.
And then other people followed. And then on the other side is that, you know, those that protested say, okay, we got somebody to listen. Now we got to do our part. And that's that momentum that has carried us to where we are today. That's why we're still seen in this county as a beacon of light, because we haven't stopped. Johnny's with us with the Walk With Us Christmas Spectacular, giving gifts to people all over the county. He has one particular family in Fenton who, this guy was in the thick of it when it comes to COVID and saw so many people die, and he had to take a step back, and Johnny picked that guy to go deliver a box, and it was a white guy in Fenton. And who was there? People from all walks of life, you know, and if we're going to get progress and make up for lost time, then you have to have police that are proud to be police officers, working with people that are activists and proud to be it, to just push forward and get some stuff done. And we've had a lot of momentum. There's still a long ways for us to grow, right? Long ways for us to get to where we need to get to, but we have shown that moment was a moment that sparked a new way of dealing with people, both law enforcement and community. Protect, serve, and unify.
If you'll expound on what's happened and what's changed since a year ago.
Oh, I mean, first of all, I was able to speak to 4.5 billion people. They saw the video within 48 hours. It hit 3.2 billion. Johnny and I have spoke to people all over the world. We've done podcasts together. We have started the Community Care Task Force. We've deputized people that are 20, 30 years from in prison from being convicted murderers as returning citizens to be county ambassadors. Johnny can call me anytime. When there's issues, we go back and forth. We have instigated the Ignite program in the county jail, educating inmates to break the chains of generational incarceration. This office has done more for the community, giving back through Walk With Us Christmas Spectacular, Feed in the Hospitals, $10,000 giveaway, a Deps and Dogs event on August the 21st, an expungement fair sponsored by the Attorney General, a May 30th reunion to celebrate this. Nobody can argue that this commitment we made that day hasn't come with results. The community hears it. We're doing voting booths in the jail. Like, I hear you. When I said, what do you need us to do? They said, walk with us. That wasn't just for that day.
Johnny, hearing this, your concerns were not necessarily directly with the Sheriff's Department. It's about your feelings about law enforcement in general. But what are your thoughts when you hear that? Do you believe that other agencies need to perhaps take similar steps?
Yeah, other agencies definitely need to take the same step. I would thoroughly agree with that. He knows we had personal conversations about just other constituents in our county that just don't want to roll with it. That's fine. That's no problem.
But we're going to keep doing our part.
Yeah, that's all we can really do at the end of the day. I mean, the biggest question a lot of people ask, you know, where do we go from here? I mean, honestly, it's still some systemical issues that I don't agree with. One of the biggest examples is this flag that still flies behind me. That sends the regressional message versus the progressional message. I get what the thin blue line stands for. He already spoke about it. My stepfather is a retired now police officer, right? I know what the line entails, but it's now used as a political thing, obviously, because of the last president we had and what you want to embark upon. But at the same time, we have to still be progressional. Like, they're still members of the community. You have to think community first. Black people are a part of the community. That doesn't change. So yeah, all the stuff that's happening from Ignite program to conversations, meeting other leaders that's outside of the city of Flint that come down here to, you know, definitely want to, you know, offer a helping hand. All those things are great, right? But we still have still a bigger issue nationally, and we still have to tackle some stuff here on the local level, you know, with stuff like that, or harassment from certain people, and not being afraid to call them out on the stuff, because that's what it comes down to. I just wish that other other agencies will have the courage, at least, to do what Swanson does. They don't currently right now, but we'll get to them eventually.
I know what it's like to be a black man in America. I do not know what it's like to be in law enforcement. To some degree, I imagine you feel like you are perhaps being blamed for things that you have no control over. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you worked in Minneapolis. There's all this frustration coming in your direction. How do you feel? What is your experience as a person in law enforcement and an elected leader in law enforcement?
Well, I think the first thing to point is that we are a profession that one decision by one officer anywhere in this country now affects us all. That's how big decisions are in law enforcement. And every police officer, whether you got a month on the job or 30 years, your interactions at the police department, your interactions on a traffic stop, tasing, a shooting, a hand-to-hand forcible interaction, community involvements, all those mini situations affect the whole country. That's the first thing. We are held to a standard that is a high standard that I've never experienced my whole career, but I welcome that. I love being a police officer. I love the fact that I can talk to everybody and still honor the badge as a third-generation police officer, but I'm different. Law enforcement is different than it was last year. It's the new police evolution. I have been able to go on stages across the country, and those stages are people's homes, to talk to them about what we need to do as police officers. Don't give up on your community and don't give up on your police. Because I guarantee even people that have said the worst of the police, when they call 911, we're going to be there. And I see that as a huge honor. And when I see officers flee, and I see community leaders and mayors and councils and boards not support their police, it hurts my heart, because I know the people that I surround myself with. We fire our own in the sheriff's office. We charge our own with crimes. We discipline our own. I don't want them to be part of this profession, because we have so many people that go every day to do the right thing, but yet the profession is very, very, public trust is hard to build, easy to lose. And if you're not willing to take on that challenge, then this is probably not a field for you. But for the hundreds of thousands of police officers that are on the job, we do it because it's inside our heart. So let's make sure that our hearts are right. We can still protect. We can still serve and unify. I use the example of Leonidas and St. Michael. Leonidas bears the sword. St. Michael protects the people. There's time to do both.
Jonnie, I want to ask you to summarize your experience as a black man in America, and maybe if there's something that even after all these protests that you feel that America has not yet heard.
You hit people with hard questions, Ryan, every time. It's not really hard per se, but you got to try to articulate it in a certain way. Being one of the leaders, I guess, of this, I don't want to call it a movement, but just a change or a revolution or a rebellion in a sense. That is, it's a high pressuring situation, because I have to watch what I do, I have to watch what I say. Kind of same sentiment as him. But to directly answer the question, being a black man in America, I'm still afraid. I'm even more so afraid now than before, because my face is all over the place. And it's like, leaving home base is like different. Your face has been all across the globe. People know who you are. What if it is an officer that don't really like you? I can't call Swanson. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's that problem still exists. I can't call him to be like, hey, this is what's going on, what do you think I should do? To ask for advice or to, because he has a different viewpoint than a lot of different officers across the country. I can't do that when I'm gone. So that pressure doesn't go away. That fear of going outside and making sure that you come back home, wherever home is for you at that time, that's still an issue. Getting a regular routine traffic stop because you maybe made a left turn you probably wasn't supposed to, or you ran a yellow going to a red super quick or something like that. You still have that anxiety of like, oh boy, let me make sure I make it home. Let me make sure I record this conversation. Let me make sure I do everything I possibly can. Let me call my mom or whoever you can possibly call so they can hear what's going on or even see what's going on. FaceTime. You may have to go live on your Instagram and Facebook. You don't know. You still live with these these fears and traumas. And that's still part of the fight, because until all people are free, we ain't free yet. That's what it come down to. So being a black man in America is still that thing, even more so now because of my faces everywhere. Not just because of the color of my skin, but because I'm known to do something different. I'm known to stand out. So now it could be an officer, I don't know, and I'm not wishing an omen, but it could be an officer that'd be like, oh, you that young man from Michigan that talked to that sheriff that I don't like either, and give them the reason to do something just because of who I am, right? So I still live with that fear, and a lot of black people in this country still live with that fear, no matter what you do. Even yourself, you're a newscaster, people see your face all the time, but you're still black, right? So that doesn't change. That's a unified thing across the board, no matter if you're ADOS, which is African Descendants of Slavery, or you just a regular black man that was born in Michigan yesterday. Black woman too, same thing. You still have to deal with this at the end of the day, and that's something that you have to push to change as much as possible, and to make people recognize that's part of just one half, not even a slither of the issue. That's part of it though. So that fear is still there. Even though I have relationships, that fear is still there.
I'm just going to finalize this by saying that that day memorialized hope. And it's a long journey and a never-ending finish. So just continue to unify in any circle of influence you have. The media has been so amazing on this journey to chronicle this movement, this culture change. Celebrate the progress. Not all that needs to be done. That can be overwhelming, but let's celebrate the progress, because we've made much progress in this community, and there's more to come.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely be thankful of the progress too. You know, something is being done at least. You know, it could have been a whole different response on May 30th of 2020. It could have been a whole different thing. My charge to black people is like, stand up for something, or you're gonna fall for anything. Don't sit there dormant or just be a keyboard warrior. But no, I'm gonna change the stuff I don't like every time. If I'm not in agreement with it, I'm going to change it as much as I possibly can. And I think that's the charge that black people across the entire country, especially here in Flint, being at home, you gotta do something. You can't just talk all the time. You gotta do something.
You gotta realize what y'all just did? The whole entire city was out here. Yeah. Every single one of y'all should be proud of yourselves. Right. Y'all made a difference today. There's no other reason why the entire city will not understand how we feel and what we feel and what we're gonna do every single time something like this happens. Right. If it happens again, we'll be out here again. Come on, man. And it's not over. The fight will never be over until we finally get some change. Yeah. Y'all understand that? Yeah. My dog. No peace. No justice. No peace.